With the grain cuts versus against the grain cuts. A lot of people have a misunderstanding about this topic right here, so that's exactly what I'm going to explain in this video. But before we get started, everybody go hit the like button right now and subscribe to my channel if you haven't already. Alright, so for some reason, people seem to think when you cut your hair against the grain, it's going to ruin your waves. This could be true in some cases, but in most cases, it's not. There's only a few key reasons that cutting against the grain would mess up your waves. Let me go over those. Number one is that you're cutting too low, and this ties into the next one. Number two is that you don't know what you're doing. And number three is that your waves just aren't trained or deep enough. But those are the only things that can really go wrong if you cut your hair against the grain. In fact, more things can actually go right. So I think it's important to realize the reasons why you could or should cut your hair against the grain. When you cut your hair against the grain, especially with waves, the cut just comes out a lot better. Why? It's more even and it's easier to do. Let me break down why it's easier and why it gives a more even cut. So let's say you have a pair of clippers and you wanted to do a haircut. Whether you're cutting against the grain or with the grain, the guard you use is going to depend on that. If I wanted to do a 1 against the grain versus a 1 with the grain, those cuts are going to look completely different. If you wanted them to equal out, a 1 with the grain is closer to like a 2 against the grain. You always need to use a higher guard when you're cutting against the grain than when you're using the same guard, or you need to use a higher guard for against the grain than with the grain. When you cut your hair against the grain, there's less space for mistakes, which makes it go a little bit smoother. Let's say I'm cutting my hair against the grain. The lowest I can possibly cut my hair is whatever guard is on the clipper. No matter what direction I move the clippers, whether it's forward, backward, side to side, it doesn't matter because I was already going to cut against the grain anyway. It was already cutting as low as the clipper could possibly cut it. But if you're cutting with the grain, it's a lot easier to mess up. Let's say you accidentally tilt the clipper one way. That pass is going to be a little bit shorter than the last one. Let's say you accidentally pass over the crown. Boom, now you got a patch. Nobody wants to be patchy the pirate. A patch just means that part of your hair is going to be a little bit shorter than the rest. These are things you have to worry about when you're cutting with the grain. You have to make sure all your angles are persistent. You get them right every single time. Against the grain, it really doesn't matter because you were already aiming for that low length anyway. So when you're cutting against the grain, it's a lot more free. You can even move the clipper within the crown. In fact, at some point during the haircut, you will move the clipper in the crown, whether it's with the grain or against the grain. But against the grain, you don't have to worry about the angle. That's what I'm trying to say. The only way I can think of that you can really mess up is if the guard falls off. But cutting with the grain, if the guard falls off, you're gonna mess up too. But it'll be really noticeable against the grain. Like crazy noticeable. Either way, it's gonna be noticeable. The risk is there either way, so don't live in fear over that. So now let's address the old myth that cutting against the grain somehow is gonna mess up your waves. Some people seem to think that one haircut against the grain is gonna cause weeks and months and years of brushing to just evaporate. You're not just going to undo all that work. Come on, think logically. Are you really going to lose all of your progress because of one haircut? Probably not. In fact, cutting against the grain is just like combing against the grain. Very similar. Look what a guard looks like, and then I'm sure you already know what a comb looks like. It's just a wide tooth comb, if you really think about it. Combing your hair doesn't ruin your waves, right? Cutting your hair backwards is the same way. All it really does is detangle your hair and lower it, which is actually a good thing. That's why when you're cutting your hair against the grain, you use a higher guard than you would with the grain. Let me actually show you what cutting against the grain looks like. I figure if I show you, then you can get a better understanding. You'll see how even it comes out. Let me actually comb it back down a little bit. And I don't need to show you guys the full haircut. I'm pretty sure there's a lot of people that probably want to see the full haircut, but there's just as many people who only came for the explanation. So if you do want to see the full haircut, I'll go ahead and leave a link below. Go ahead and check that out. The full version of this video is actually hilarious. But if you actually look closely, you can see that I'm using a pretty high guard. This is probably like a 3 or a 4. I've got the lever closed and I'm going against the grain. Let's just say I'm using a 3 in this video. But if I were to go with the grain, I'd probably be using a 2 guard. Do you kind of get what I mean? Whenever you go against the grain, always make sure to use a higher guard because the haircut is going to come out lower with against the grain cuts. But when you have that higher guard on, just look at the way it looks. Of course, I need to comb it down and everything. But when I comb it down and even brush it down, you'll see just how even it looks. Actually, let me show you what it looks like right now when I comb it down. Actually, let me brush it down. That'll make even more of a difference. Look at this. Crazy. So look, y'all tell me in the comments, does it look like my waves are messed up? Honestly, the haircut turned out fire. I like it. Let me know, do you like it? I mean, it really doesn't matter. It's too late. The hair's gone. But I do want to take some time to show you guys a with the grain haircut, just for comparison. So for the with the grain haircut, I'm actually going to do a 1 with the grain. This is a lot lower than I would typically cut my waves. But at the time of actually doing this haircut, I did have a reason for cutting it that low. And for the purpose of this video, it just has a very similar look, at least to the final result of the against the grain haircut that we just did. And just like the last one, I'm sure there are people that want to watch the full thing, the full haircut from top to bottom. So I'll leave the link down below. And don't even ask me why I'm cutting it on the side here and the top there. It just seems so weird. You're about to see in a second. I'm just trying to make it look as awkward as possible so I can get a good thumbnail. Wait, let me comb it down so you can see what I'm talking about. Watch, look at this. But anyway, let me show you guys a little bit more of this haircut. But as you look, really pay attention. Remember how I told you with the grain haircuts, the angles that you're cutting the hair are a lot more important. Versus against the grain, you can cut just a little bit more free. You've got room to make mistakes. You've got room to make changes to angles. When you're cutting with the grain, each angle is gonna look a little bit different. That's why you can see some spots look a little bit darker. By the way, guys, go ahead in the comment section, give me a rating on my waves 1 through 10. And then actually, you know what? Grade this haircut. I think it's an A+, but who knows? Some of you guys might think it's an F. Give me a grade down below. And while you're at it, grade the against the grain haircut too. Tell me which one you think turned out better. Now that I'm looking at it, this one did turn out a little bit fuller just because it was the 3 against the grain, and the with the grain cut was a 1 with the grain. So maybe next time I'll compare different guards. All right, so this is how the cut turned out. Not bad. I kind of messed up the lineup on this side. I went a little high, but it doesn't really matter to me. 90% of the people I see on an everyday basis have messed up lineups anyway. It's a terrible thing to say, but it's true. Tell me in the comment section down below what you think of this haircut. Rate it on a scale from 1 to 10. I'm interested to see what you guys think. This is definitely not the best haircut I've ever done, but it's a decent one. So that's everything about cutting your hair against the grain. If I missed anything or if you have any more questions, whether it's about waves or about haircuts, leave them in the comments below. And yeah, that's pretty much it for this video. I'm Wave Man Mike. Subscribe, comment, and like. Enjoy your day.